Hey everyone, and welcome to the Gaming Corner podcast. I'm getting a sense of deja vu, like we've been here before. Only this time we've got Demakes on the mind. Let's talk about it. I'm your host, Jeff, and joining me today is Adam. How's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good, I suppose.
Great. And we've also got Daniel, aka Dance Warrior 777.
I have returned from the darkness. Yes.
He's back. He was studying long and hard on what the difference is between a remake and a remaster in the last 2 weeks. But he's back.
I will remake this into a masterpiece.
There you go. And finally joining us is Henry. Hey, Hen.
Oh my god, please help me.
Poor guy. He's been waiting
I'm stuck
patiently.
here with crazy people!
He's been waiting patiently for us to start this podcast for the last 15 minutes, but alas, we've been just chatting about random operettas and whatnot. But
I literally just turned my brain off for the last 15 minutes.
But we're finally here to talk about Vigima games, my friends. So guys, thank you for joining me for episode 9 of the Gaming Corner podcast. Real quick before we get started, I want to remind the fans that we are available on YouTube. Volatile Upgrade is the channel. You can see the video version of the podcast there, or if the audio version is to more your liking, we have our audio version on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and a couple others, so feel free to go check us out there. And if you have a question for us for the next podcast, feel free to post in the comments or our Discord server. Links in the description. With that, go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was also going to say, if they have a very, very powerful microphone, they'll be able to hear this hear this podcast live.
Okay.
Huh?
What? You know what? No, I don't want to know.
I don't. Okay, no.
Everyone just went, no.
On to our topics for this week.
Yes,
Oh,
today,
no.
Guys, we are going to address a topic that we almost talked about last week. So, just a real quick recap of last week's conversation. We talked about remasters, remakes, and reimaginings. Just so that I give a decent premise for this topic, which is on Demakes and Demasters. A remake and a remaster are two very similar types of games. The remaster is essentially just taking an existing game, upping the quality of the audio and the video stuff, and making minor, tiny little tweaks to the gameplay. And a remake is more along the lines of building the game from the ground up again, or just altering the art style to the point where it's a little more than just a remaster. So, just a quick synopsis there. I think we can all agree on those.
Yep. No, I think so. We finally got to last week.
Yeah,
I suppose.
after about an hour and a half, we finally arrived to that conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, those types of games are meant to bring a game to a more modern console, or make it run better on a more modern PC than the game was originally meant to be run on. That's the idea of a remake or a remaster. But a demake and a demaster are the opposite. They take a game from an existing platform and either remake it, remaster it, or port it in such a way that it's running on a less powerful piece of hardware. My example for a demaster, I have Yoshi's Woolly World here. This game was released on the Wii U in 2015, and in 2017, it was re-released on the Nintendo 3DS. Obviously a much weaker piece of hardware, some definite downscaling had to happen, there were some compromises that had to be made to get this thing to run on the 3DS, but get it to run on the 3DS they did. That is a demaster. And my example for a demake, it has to be a little bit more than just porting the game to a weaker console. It had to be remade somewhat. So my example for you, 1996, Super Mario 64 hit the Nintendo 64. And in 2004, that game was remade, or should I say demade, for the Nintendo DS, Super Mario 64 DS. 3 additional playable characters, 30 additional stars, revamped art style, re-recorded audio. The game was remade, but plays on the Nintendo DS. Gentlemen, that is what a demake and a demaster are. What are your thoughts? Just right off the cuff thoughts. What do you think?
The Mario game on the DS sucked dick. It was awful. That game was so fucking bad. I can't believe they ruined it like that.
You know what? I would say that that's a hot take, but I think pretty much all of us are in agreement with you, myself included.
I'm not
Like,
gonna lie.
It's cool. It's portable, but man.
I am happy to be completely ignorant about how bad that is. So I'm just, when I think of demakes, it reminds me a lot of when a good game would come out, but it would come out on like the new console, and no one had the new console because everyone was skeptical about it, so they had to like go back a generation just to sell it. This happened quite a bit with. I gotta think. I use my big brain. It happened with PlayStation quite a bit.
That's kind of a similar thing, but alas, that's a slightly different topic. We're talking about games that were released on a platform and then were later released on a weaker console. Again, my primary example here would be Super Mario 64 on the DS or Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64 being demade and to run on the Nintendo DS.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So it's essentially a reproduction of the game designed to fit on a weaker system.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not an actual, like, both of them are being released, but one is optimized for a weaker system while the other one's optimized for a stronger system.
Exactly. The game is originally designed for one platform, then later ported to another platform that is less powerful.
I'm not gonna lie, the only reason I'm getting this topic easier is because every time I hear demake, I think of Digimon. I shit you not.
Digimon, digital monsters.
Because they digivolve up and down. So weaker Digimon, stronger Digimon. It just works in my brain. I don't know why.
Now,
because we only have 2 choices as well instead of the 3.
Yeah, that definitely helps. And
that's true. That is also.
And they are different magnitudes of remaking the game or demaking the game, I should say. Especially in the case of Super Mario 64 DS, that's like my primary demake example, is because they added a lot of new features to the game, changed a lot of stuff in it. It's definitely not the same game that it was on the Nintendo 64. Same style, same levels, but controls were changed. 3 new characters were added, 30 new stars. Completely redone game. So, yeah. Now, I know Henry and I have at least played Mario 64 DS. Adam, Dan, do you have any experience with Demakes and Demasters?
A demake. Well, when you say handheld console, that's going to be my department. Unless you're talking about Advance Wars, then
it can be anything.
Adam had a good time. I'm trying to think. Oh, did I experience a game that The problem is getting the same game again, just because of how I wouldn't say just I wasn't in the gaming like world as deep as I am now. Back in the day, it was kind of like, oh, Ma handed me this game. I guess we're playing Jimmy Neutron on the Game Boy Advance.
Oh,
Game Boy
the good
Advance
old
SP.
days. Mine was SpongeBob.
Oh, you lucky man. I have to say though, all like the 2D scrollers that had big names and like SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron were kind of painful.
Well, yeah, they were animated TV show tie-ins for kids. Of course, they sucked.
Oh. But then again, like SpongeBob, the Battle for Bikini Bottom was actually kind of good. I actually played that on the PlayStation 2. Although Just trying to think of an actual demake where I essentially bought the same game twice. I honestly don't think I've experienced that.
Okay. What about you, Adam?
I've been trying to think here about what an example would be, and I'm really having trouble.
Yeah, I will say that this is mostly a Nintendo phenomenon.
Yeah, it's mostly to cram games onto their newer handhelds.
Well, actually,
It's not only a Nintendo phenomenon. Sony's done this too. Like they've you know the PlayStation 3 collections for Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper, and Jak and Daxter?
I
They
was just thinking that.
they demastered those and put them on the PS Vita as well.
How fucking dare you? Those games played beautifully on that Vita.
Well, sure, but they're still a demaster. They're running at a lower frame rate, a lower resolution. It's still the same game, but it's running on weaker hardware.
How dare you?
What?
Yeah, I know.
It does.
Still, honestly, you can't
would
really
that be
even
a
tell. Like,
remake?
performance-wise, that it felt the same. Like, there was no big issues with the game.
Yeah,
Or any of them, for that matter.
Yeah, and that's good. I do find that interesting that Demakes and Demasters, at least the ones that I've had experience with, even though they run on weaker hardware, compromises have to be made, they're still pretty well optimized. Like my example from earlier, Yoshi's Woolly World onto the 3DS here. On the Wii U, it runs at 1080p 60 frames per second. On the 3DS, it's a 240p screen, and it only runs at 30 frames per second. So, but compromises had to be made, of course. Still a good quality port, though. Like, I have to say they did a good job with this one. I've been meaning to go back and replay it, but I'll get to it.
I was thinking of demakes. I think I've experienced it, but in a strange way. So hear me out. There was a game that did come out, a Ratchet and Clank game that did come out on the PS Vista.
It's a Vita. And I think you're talking about the PSP, Ratchet and Clank Size Matters.
Yep. Size Matters. And just comparing it to other Ratchet and Clanks.
No, but that was a whole separate game. It wasn't it wasn't like Ratchet and Clank 1 on PS2 reported over to the PSP.
Right, and I think it was also simultaneously released on PlayStation 3 or 2.
Ooh, don't know about that. Probably, though.
Yeah. It's just, for me, though, it gives me that, at least kind of the feel of a demake, just because of how unoptimized that game was for the PlayStation 2. It was so short.
Yes, but that's more of just the game was bad.
It was so short.
It's just not. It's just part of the series, so it wasn't a demaster or a demake or anything like that.
Right.
It wasn't a previously existing game that they ported over. Now, if it was like released like Jeff said, on PS2 or PS3 first, and then they ported it over, then you could do that as like a demaster.
Right.
But
same
time, same thing. So
yeah, that's as close though as I can get to really playing a demake, because I didn't have a lot of different systems to really experience that.
Ratchet and Clank was Size Matters was released in 2007 on the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation 2, and I believe it's simultaneously release.
Why would you even advertise to the PlayStation 2? It was so.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
it's also the best-selling console of all time, so kind of have to take that into consideration.
Quick question.
Overruled.
Overruling the overruled.
So fairly regularly, they put like mobile games onto Steam with relatively minor modifications, so you can control them with a mouse and keyboard. But
are we talking about
that's about
Balloon Tower Defense?
No, I was thinking of Kingdom Wars, but
yeah, Plague Inc. also.
Yep, Plague Inc. Like I can think of
a multitude of games.
Yeah, they do that fairly regularly. Can you think of any that moved the other way, because that might be an example.
Like what PC to mobile?
Someone took a
mobile?
game and smished it down into a...
The original Final Fantasies, I think 1 through 6, I think they ported those to mobile, and then
I think you're right.
and then I think they came back to Switch later.
But that's almost not a demake because the process, like,
But no,
the
it is a
power
demaster.
a demaster. Yes,
I'd say a demaster, yeah, because
demaster. Yeah,
I
not
mean,
demake.
technically the cell phones are more powerful pieces of hardware than the NES and SNES, but obviously the controls are not up to snuff on those. Like, they had to be remade for a touchscreen, so I guess that would fit our definition. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I was just like trying to come up with more examples like that. I was just...
Sure. I mean, this is kind of tough because this practice is not as common these days, and I don't think it ever was as common as remakes and remasters.
For obvious reasons. If
Right.
you're like, generally it's like, look at our examples. It's when you're moving something. Oh, excuse me. If you're moving something onto...
Chirp, 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 chirp.
Yeah. When you're moving something to a mobile platform, because that'd be the only reason you do it. Like, you wouldn't make a game look worse to put it on a weaker platform unless there was a huge advantage to that platform, being that it's essentially a small mobile platform.
Mhm.
So what
So that's
Adam is
Really
saying,
the only time, because like, if you're going to put the effort into it, you have to, like, there has to be a selling point. Otherwise you're just going to be like wasting your time and effort,
Yeah.
which means that there has to be some upside. Like, I bet this might be a thing in, it's almost a thing in, like, moving to VR. Like, games have been remade for VR, but in some cases they've almost been demade. They've almost had to knock down resolutions in some cases to, get it to run on VR.
oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about, Adam.
So, like, that might be another transition to look at, but I'm just saying that, like, generally you don't make a game worse on purpose, because that's not going to, like, be a selling point.
Yeah.
right.
Unless,
Oh no, Adam, I have something to say. So, because of the fact that a game was shifted over into VR, I would like to say this as an anecdotal story. Because of the fact it wasn't a demaster, would it be a demade? No, demaster. Just the same game, just lower quality for the VR. Because of my graphics card only having 2 gigabytes, there's a 2 or 3. Anyway, very low virtual RAM. I got into Subnautica, right? That thing was running at like 30, 40 frames per second. Now imagine
Ooh, in VR.
playing that.
Oof.
And also, mind you, your right stick is the direction you are facing in an underwater swimming game. So imagine trying to steer underwater with your head with low frame rate, trying to navigate and look at objects to collect them, and having to resurface every 45 seconds. You know what we called that? Roller coaster vomit simulator. It felt amazing.
It sounds like it would feel the opposite of amazing.
It was. And because of the fact they didn't naturally like optimize it for like a demaster, would that be a demaster?
I mean, I guess so.
The demastering, it made the VR experience for that game so nauseating and so hard to really wrap your head around. Where the hell am I in the game world? Just because you had to move so much and you didn't have a chance to really go, oh, I can relax for 2 minutes.
Now,
It was a beautiful game, but it was just, it could not handle that much processing. Which, to be honest, is my graphics card. It needs an upgrade. Poor baby. It needs love. But
now,
yeah.
I find demasters and demakes to be a really interesting practice. As Adam mentioned earlier, most of the time you're not gonna remake or demake a game on purpose. Like, there's got to be a reason for it, like a selling point of some kind.
Like my kidneys.
And for the examples that I've put forward, particularly Yoshi's Woolly World, I think that their selling point, or the reason that they did that, was because the Wii U, as all of you guys know, flopped. That thing did not even sell 14 million consoles, whereas the 3DS sold 79 million?
To be honest, the Wii U was a very, very strange device.
It was. I think it was more the marketing that was the problem, but, just the
it's a
core
portable
design.
device that isn't portable. So what you're saying is I just bought a mini television that I can't move anywhere except where the console is. Yeah.
The point is, the point is they demade that, or demastered that game to run on the 3DS, obviously to recoup some sales. I don't think it went very well. The 3DS version didn't sell nearly as much as the Wii U version, but I think that it was the reason that they did it. It was selling on a more popular platform. That was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Why else do you think companies would demake or demaster games?
Well, if we're going to look at this from an analytical point, we have to see how you can generate a profit to get more from doing a demake. And one of the huge selling points is, yes, you're reducing quality, but increasing accessibility allows, even though it is a weaker quality, more people can actually get and are able to play the game and, interact with it. Which, hilariously, right now, some of the really big titles in, like, PlayStation, I would say PlayStation 4 and, like, Xbox One, for a while, the games were popular, but, like, Steam was just in the background, like, so, what about it? My games sell just astronomically huge because of accessibility, while yours are just over here because only little console trying to hold on. I'm actually really happy though. Horizon Zero Dawn moved to Steam just so I can actually have a chance to try it out. Although a lot of optimization I did hear had to happen because it has to run on so many different kinds of graphics cards.
It's almost like we don't want to call it a demake. Like, we want to call it like a side make almost. Like,
right. You don't want to say it was like, oh, we reduced the quality.
There are a lot of times when they like just kind of
experience.
they just kind of like try and directly translate them across different lines, and it's
right,
not quite. Calling it one or the other is.
And it's hard, really, to have a demake for any other reason other than accessibility because of the fact it's losing out in the advantages that a remastering has. Because remastering is just an upgrade to everything, and this is a quality downgrade, which normally would persuade you to just get the other one.
Get the original.
It's like the Chinese knockoff. Like, why would you buy a Chinese knockoff except for pricing and like accessibility? Like, it's so much easier to get my hands on this really crappy AirPod that only functions 20% of the time, but it's wireless though. Whereas the Apple product is, who knows how much are AirPods? $60?
I think they're like $250.
Are they $250?
I think so.
My rule of thumb, if I'm able to, the amount of minutes it takes me to break is the amount of hundreds of dollars something should cost. If this takes me an hour to smash with my full capability, it's easily worth, a solid $6,000. If I can break something in 3 seconds, it should only be worth like $20. 130 tops. Why 250?
Because Apple.
Apple needs to get their copyrights.
Well, we're
shove it
getting
up
kind
their
of off topic
Way
here,
off topic.
but
Henry, you've had more experience with these demakes. I remember trying out the Jak and Daxter demakes or demasters on your PS Vita. What did you think?
Like, just overall thoughts of them?
Yeah, like with your experience, why do you think a company would demake or demaster a game? Like, what benefits do you see in it from your perspective?
I mean, from the looks of it, they're going more for portability and accessibility, whereas people on the go are more likely, or do a lot of traveling, would like to play the games that they enjoy again while taking them like on business trips and stuff like that, or long car rides and things. Would be probably like their first mindset, or like new consoles that they're really trying to get a good push for, where they had good sales for that game on a previous console. Like probably the Jak and Daxter was a big pull of a crowd in order to get people to purchase a PS Vita, and the ones that do have that would end up purchasing the game again to play it on the go kind of thing.
Interesting. Like kind of a reverse situation what I was talking about. I was talking about recouping losses. You're talking about drumming up more interest in the new console.
Yeah, it could be a selling point because a lot of people, because like I could really like Jak and Daxter, and my disc could be scratched up or my console doesn't work anymore for the PS3. I really want to play it. Oh, PS Vita. I happen to have one laying around that I don't touch, but I can end up buying Jak and Daxter again, which is on those little like SD type of cards, and then you just pop it in. Don't have to worry about disc scratching or anything. And then there you go. You have it on the go and you're able to play it again.
Very nice. Yeah, I do find that interesting. Oftentimes, these demakes and demasters are kind of positioned as showing off a selling point of a console. Like, usually handheld consoles are the ones that get the demakes and demasters. And oftentimes, it's to showcase the power of the new fancy handheld console. Like Henry was talking about with the Jak and Daxter games. Like, they were on a PS2 originally, and now they're running on a PS Vita. You can take it on the go wherever you want. Very little compromise. Like, that's a selling feature. I find that to be a very interesting reason for the existence of demakes and demasters.
Like I say, I feel like it's just them trying to get some last second sales in for things, which then could either A, support the game that they're trying to sell again, or B, sell the console for the game that people like as well. Plus their kids and everything too. Like, hey, I like this game. I'll get this for my son, daughter, child, and see if they enjoy it. And then if they don't, I could just play it again because I enjoyed this game.
For sure. All right. Anybody else have any ideas as to why a company might make a demake or a demaster?
there has to be some sort of
benefit.
Yeah, extra benefit. Because, like, in theory, a remake or a remaster is going to make money if it's like a popular game. People need it for the new generation of stuff, or even just if it's like a remake, maybe it's like the better version of it. Like, theoretically, you're improving the game and therefore you are adding value to it. If you're demaking something, you're technically taking some value out of it. It's not like you're making it worse. You must be adding a lot more value somewhere else. There must be some other draw, something else that's like, I would think of the more exceptions than the rule, like, type thing. Makes sense? Like, it would be something you'd only do when there's some other reason. You wouldn't just go ahead and demake a game. There'd have to be some very specific reason that's probably not entirely to do with the game, i.e., like, you want to move it on to a mobile or something like that you would do something like that.
Yeah. That does.
So exception, not the rule type thing.
Yeah, that does seem to be, to your last point, and as I've mentioned, demakes and demasters seem to be very popular with their handhelds. But as you pointed out, there has to be something more to draw you to a game that's being demade. Otherwise, why not just play the original? one example that I have for that point, Adam, is Donkey Kong Country Returns. DKC Returns on the Wii, great game, but I have one big problem with it, and that's to make Donkey Kong roll, you have to shake the Wii remote. And that makes me feel like an absolute dingus. And it also sucks from a precision standpoint. But that game was demade for the 3DS later down the line, and that shaking of the controller was mapped to the R button, which means that you can play that game more like a regular human would play a video game. So
I don't know what you're talking about, Jeff. Hand fapping simulator while getting my Donkey Kong on is totally normal. The dead silence of everyone processing.
I don't know what to say to that.
Oh,
but
Literally nothing.
but yeah, that's an interesting kind of situation. They saw an opportunity in the demaking the game to fix something that, maybe people had an issue with.
right. They actually mechanically improved the game and made it more reliable, actually.
Yeah.
Although there are games in which I would say stepping down and just having less controls or buttons to work with actually can make it a touch clunkier. I'm trying to think of a good example.
I got
that
one.
was a great example, Jeff.
I got an example of a game that controlled phenomenally on the original system, but in the demake, it was a little more clunky. Gentlemen, are you familiar with the Super Mario Advance series?
No, never heard of it.
So
Is that new?
no,
Just released?
no. They're games on the Game Boy Advance. So they took
new console. Nice.
They took Super Mario Bros. 2, Mario Bros. 3, Super Mario World, and Yoshi's Island, all of which were either on the NES or the SNES, and they demade them for the Game Boy Advance. Now here's the thing. Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. I don't think any of you are too super familiar with the SNES, but it's the console that kind of defined the face button layout for the rest of the industry moving forward. It's the reason why we have 4 face buttons on our controllers now. It's also the first one to come up with shoulder buttons. Needless to say, there were a decent number of buttons on that controller. Compare that to the Game Boy Advance. It does have 2 shoulder buttons, but it only has 2 face buttons. To your point, Daniel, of how it can be a little more clunky on a demake, you have like almost half of the buttons to work with. They had to map some of the controls to buttons that didn't really make any sense.
Oh, heaven save us.
Like the spin jump that Mario does. It used to be mapped to the A button, or for you Xbox guys, that would be your equivalent of the B button, where the B button on the Super Nintendo, or A button Xbox equivalent, would be your normal jump. While in the Mario Advance game, that spin jump is mapped to the R button, the shoulder button. A little clunky. Workable, it works, but it's clunky. There's my example for you, Dan.
Yeah. That's actually a really good example. Thank you, Jeff.
Gosh, I have too much experience with demakes, guys.
Yeah, you do.
I think I'm like the resident expert on demakes right now.
Yeah.
Weird. It's like we went down the PC evolution, whereas
meanwhile,
Jeff
I like devolved.
Jeff had to devolve into all the Nintendo handhelds.
You know what's actually interesting though, guys, is at least in the case of Yoshi's Island, that game's demake on the Game Boy Advance was my first experience with Yoshi's Island as a whole. And it kind of made playing the original one feel a little weird to me. That I don't think that happens very often, but it certainly did for me. Same kind of thing with Mario Bros. 3. Something...
I can...
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I can understand that just because... this is going to sound strange, but with League moving into a new sort of advancement and having the new item set up, you have to pay way more attention to active items because almost all of the new powerful ones are actives. So it almost feels like that, Jeff, because League before was like, all right, you just got to worry about these, just fighting the opponent, remembering this and that, and you're good to go. But now it's like, all right, remember this, that, your active item, potions, what the enemy's building and trying to counteract that. And it's like, it just feels weird. So I get that nostalgia, yes.
Yeah. One other thing I want to bring up to you guys. Once again, clearly I have more experience with Demakes and Demasters. I feel bad I'm kind of dominating this topic, but
dominated.
But
he's the dominating.
I find Demakes and Demasters to be very interesting. The presence and the existence of these fascinates me, but they also frustrate me because very often with a demake and a demaster, as one is to learn from time and experience, typically these demakes and demasters have features in them that weren't in the original game. So in a gameplay kind of sense, let me give you a quick example. That Yoshi's Island demaster, or demake rather, I consider that to be the version of the game that I prefer to play, not only because it's the one I grew up with, but it also has 6 brand new levels that are exclusive to the Game Boy Advance version. Did not appear in the original. And these ones were very interesting levels that made use of kind of obscure little mechanics, like the fact that when you jump off of an enemy and then do a flutter jump, that flutter jump would be higher than a normal flutter jump would be. There are levels that make advantage or take advantage of that mechanic in the Game Boy Advance version. Obviously, those new levels are very new and interesting, very compelling reason to pick up the game. It's most of the reason why I play that game over the SNES version. But there are also big compromises, most notable of which is screen crunch. Screen crunch is a term used to describe when it's basically like looking out your window and seeing like the whole yard and everything. But then you have someone come in and replace your window, and it's a smaller window, you can't see as much. That's basically what the Super Nintendo versus Game Boy Advance versions of the game, that's the analogy for it. Like, you can't see as much of the screen real estate in the Game Boy Advance version, which obviously hinders your ability to platform, your ability to see enemies further off screen. It's a hindrance. The game also runs at a lower frame rate and a lower resolution. The colors are washed out because of the original Game Boy Advance. Welcome back, Adam. The original Game Boy Advance's screen.
Good button push, Adam. Good button push.
Obviously, there are a lot of graphical downgrades with the Game Boy Advance version of the game. And audio as well. The music doesn't sound as good. The sound effects don't sound as good as the SNES version. This causes a very specific problem in my mind that the games that go the demake and demaster route specifically have is that it's very hard to figure out what or if there is a definitive version of that game. I don't know which version of Yoshi's Island is the definitive version. And the existence of a demake and demaster necessitates that kind of struggle. What do you guys think about that? I know that was a mouthful, but basically with a demake and a demaster, it means that there isn't really a definitive version of the game. Does that frustrate you guys as much as it frustrates me?
No.
I was going to say probably not.
All of us who have never experienced it before. I don't see the problem here,
I've experienced it. It's just, I don't know, it's just something that doesn't bother me. I mean, companies are companies. They're just going to try and get as much money as they can out of the consumers in any way and form or fashion that they see fit.
Including force feeding?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Why not?
Oh,
it's just companies. They don't care. If you're willing to pay for it and they think you're willing to pay for it and they market it accordingly, then they're going to get you to buy it. So,
well, sure, but the fact that there isn't a definitive version to play, it's like you got to figure out which version you would prefer to play. What's more important to you, the graphics or the extra levels or the sound quality, and the fact that both of those aren't like smished into one thing. It's like you got to play both versions of the game to experience the goodness of both, and that kind of frustrates me.
See, I would be more worried if it was more of a common thing, especially the demaster, demake kind of thing. Whereas now we're seeing more of like the remasters, remakes, and the reimagining. Reimagining. Fucking third option there. I think that's more, but it's just them usually updating graphics and making things prettier and trying to be more friendly with that stuff. So like not having a definitive like version to have, whatever, doesn't bother me all that much because it's not that common that it happens.
Makes sense. What about you, Adam and Dan?
Abadaban?
Abadaban.
I just don't run into the problem enough to be annoyed by it. Essentially.
I mean, you're also pretty much like mainly PC now, though, Adam, too.
Exactly. That's why I don't run into the problem very much.
Right.
You're not looking at the console games anyways, because you don't have any of the newer consoles, and whatever consoles you do have, you already have the games that you'd be even maybe interested in
playing.
Yeah.
Heck, I don't even have consoles I play anymore. I have the few I don't just straight up have on PC I emulate.
Yeah. So that's where that's at. Dan, you're maybe closer to running into that issue
with the VR stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. VR has truly taught me what you should do in a game and what you shouldn't do in a game with a 1 pound weight strapped to your face.
It's more than a single pound, I'm afraid, Daniel.
Is it more? Is that why my neck is so strong? Son of a bitch. So you could say, since none of us are really familiar with this topic, that Jeff really is the D-Master.
Yeah! I've earned that title, dang it.
Congrats, you win.
Yeah.
What you win, I don't know, but you got it.
Shut up, judgmental robot number 3.
You know what I win is the ability to complain about not having definitive versions of the games I love.
I mean, I guess.
That's like my recompense for being good at this topic, I guess, is that I have this eternal struggle.
I would say part of the struggle that I felt is when they do marketing for the Demakes and the Demasters, and they give it the same title.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a demake or a demaster. It's not supposed to be a new game.
Right, but when it's exactly the same, but they say something like, they have to say something like Pocket Edition or
how about this one?
Version.
Yoshi's Woolly World on the Wii U, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World on the 3DS.
That sounds like an expansion. It does not sound like
it kind of is. In the 3DS version, there is a Poochie limitless run mode, or not a limitless run.
Oh, poopy dog. Bark.
Yeah.
So neat.
Yeah, Henry, what was that thing you said in our Yoshi's Woolly World playthrough?
Yo, it's the motherfucking pooch, my dude.
Heck yeah. That's the description of Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World.
The pain.
You don't fuck with the pooch, man. Drop you in that fucking lava. He won't care.
Pooch give you
he does
smooch.
not give a fuck.
Poochie give smoochy.
Oh, that is really funny.
Oh Lord.
Well, I think that there's one more question I have for you guys for this topic, but pretty much we've already answered it. As we mentioned before, this practice was often to either recoup sales or to elevate a new platform to like show off its abilities. like with Mario 64 DS. This game can run on a handheld console? No way! But
It can't. They proved it. It wasn't the same game. They proved that it doesn't work. Fucking idiots.
They had to do a demake.
well
done, marketing team.
Well, considering the fact that we don't really have as many of these weaker consoles coming out anymore, like we're more focused on the strength of a platform rather than the portability of it these days, with the possible exception of the Switch. That's kind of its own beast. Do we see this whole demake and demaster thing going away? I think we kind of have been. But what do you guys think?
I think so. I mean, there's no real like handheld consoles anymore. It's mostly the Switch is the handheld console that's also an actual console.
Essentially, the technology has gotten good enough that we're reaching unity, or whatever the heck they call that mathematically, where they're the same thing, essentially.
Equilibrium.
That's not the one.
Dang it.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jeff's got a point though.
Basically, we're approaching the point where, immobile giant systems will always be stronger, but the line's getting blurrier.
Mm.
I think we need new glasses then.
Cataract surgery is always an option.
Oh, true. Didn't think about that.
I look better with glasses, gosh dang it.
I heard the cataract surgery doesn't go too well, though. Like, it works at first, but then they come back and it's even worse.
Everything gets so fuzzy these days.
But the point you're making is that the the lines between a handheld and a home console now, like they're blurred enough to the point we don't need demakes and demasters anymore.
They are one and the same.
Though
Not
to
quite,
be,
but we drift that way.
teacher.
But then, as I was saying, there might be like a whole big thing with VR or something where you like the game has to be like pretty massively
Teacher, Henry's
retooled?
punching me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not touching
for
you.
VR.
Henry's beating the fuck out of me.
Accurate. He's been annoying me.
I don't know what's happening in the corner of the classroom.
I don't know either.
I went to say something and Adam immediately interrupted. So,
Oh well, what's up, Danny?
you'll listen to the audio later. You'll get the joke. So,
No, he won't.
what I've noticed is in the console wars, I've noticed that Nintendo is the portable junkie as of this point.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it be, though. And so to say that home console and portable is being blurred with Nintendo, blurred, it's also a drink holder and can also be used to make nice fettuccine on a Friday night if the console is rotated at a specific angle. They're going for adaptability at a crazy rate, where the other systems are just like, we just do what we do, but better thinking, better process. They don't judge. People spend money, and it's slapping them in the face because they're like, why? And the PC people are like, because it's literally a PC, just sideways. Stop it. No. And that honestly, I'm gonna say PlayStation 3 and forward, when it comes to portability, if they actually went into a market that was interesting to stay away from like being similar to a PC, they would be doing much better. But when it comes to portability, Nintendo, I literally see Nintendo coming up with a portable VR first if they go that way.
They kind of have already.
Where the hell are they putting the batteries for that monster?
Oh no!
Are you guys familiar with?
It's gonna be like a backpack with like wires coming out, going to your head.
Dan. I don't think Nintendo is ever gonna understand VR because they kind of have a VR implementation in place already. Have you ever heard of Labo?
Oh no!
The cardboard box.
No,
That's right.
So
that inspired
they made
all
a
the
quote-unquote
phones?
VR headset, which is basically just a box that you put the Switch into and you hold it up to your face so your eyes are looking directly at the Switch's screen. That's their idea of VR.
No.
To be completely honest, everyone,
No.
people have been profiting
No.
on taking a phone and making a cardboard cutout and
no.
strapping your phone to your face.
It's like one of those
This
cheap
is
Dollar
not
General
unheard of.
VR solutions.
Exactly.
That's what it's at, yeah.
Wait, guys, is that a demake for VR?
No, that's a no effort cash in.
Yeah, probably.
What? We can do VR too. No, you can't. Nintendo, sit back down. Put your head back in that astronaut helmet filled with gummy bears.
To be honest, though, the ideas they get from that gummy bear helmet have really made them stand apart from the other consoles.
That's one way of putting it.
Some days you win, and some days you make the Wii U.
Wow.
Yeah.
Welcome to Japan.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess the short answer to do we expect more Demakes and Demasters is no. So
Yeah.
Do we
Probably not. How about that?
Yeah. Unless somehow Nintendo creates an ultimate home console like an Xbox and then evolves the Switch into this weird portable VR, and that's how they like diverge. I don't. Here comes another set of LSD gummy
let's get
bears.
this. We're starting to. Yeah, I know.
Here we go.
well, before we move on, gentlemen, does anyone else have any thoughts left remaining on Demakes and Demasters?
I think we are done.
Well, I think then we can wrap that up. Demakes, Demasters, their existence is interesting and also frustrating, but more interesting, I guess. There you
And
go.
at the end of the day, we can devolve into one conclusion.
And that is
Jeff finished the statement.
And that is that Demakes have a definitive place in history, but that definitive place in history is making sure definitive versions don't exist of games.
And that only the default can truly believe.
Okay, we've officially went too far. On to the next topic.
Guys, we mentioned handhelds a lot in the last discussion with Demakes and Demasters. That is
Strange.
because those were mostly the primary candidates for these Demakes and Demasters. But what do we think about the handheld consoles themselves? We've all used them, right?
Yeah,
No,
I think so.
never.
Bull and poopy.
What's the purpose of
Never-
a handheld? Like, why do they exist?
It holds hands,
Well, that's romantic.
right?
Why else?
I don't know, portability. I feel like that's
That
probably
right
the biggest.
there, that right there, I think is the only reason that handheld consoles exist is portability. But
I mean, they're not as powerful, obviously, because they
Well-
can't have like a massive battery strapped on them bad boys at all times for long durations of time.
the Sega Nomad would beg to differ.
Well, I mean, listen, everyone had their limit testing, and that's where theirs ended.
I will say though, like that idea of the fact that a game could be portable was at one point, and still kind of is, quite novel. This traces way back to the days of the NES, back in the 80s. Obviously, most game consoles, like, you know, we were just getting used to the idea of hooking a game console up to our television and playing the game on our television. The next step was the Game Boy. I forget what year the Game Boy was released. I want to say like 1990, but it could have been a little earlier. But the fact that you could play approximations of your favorite games on the go, very exciting. The only reason I say approximations is because I'm thinking Super Mario Bros. On the NES versus Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. They tried.
What a wonderful world.
But still, like, the idea of just bringing games with you wherever you go, free of a TV, free of cables for the most part, that was exciting back in the day. That whole thing of portability was awesome. And again,
I still think it's...
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I still think it's very much like a large niche, but like I think it's moved away from like dedicated game consoles, with like perhaps the exception of the Switch, and it's moved entirely into the realm of, or not entirely, mostly into the realm of mobile games, like on your phone. Like it's your, you know, it's something you carry with you all the time, and it does games.
Yeah. Well, we've still had, all of us have had dedicated handheld consoles. I think every single one of us has experience with the Game Boy Advance. What was that like for you guys? What did you think of the Game Boy Advance?
I love that
the
thing.
Shit, my dude.
Of course, that was our like prime gaming era.
Oh yeah, it was. We were like 9 or 10 when that console came out, and I think I got mine in like 2005. So I was like 11.
Just to refresh the memory, that was the one that required like the AA batteries and everything, right?
The original Game Boy Advance model, yes.
Because then, unless you're thinking about like the Game Boy Advance SP,
The
which
SP
had the
is
rechargeable.
The SP is the one I had. The what was it was the one with the backlit screen.
Yeah.
I love
SP.
that thing.
That's what I had. I love that thing.
Dude, that thing was a monster. That was such a game changing, not having to fucking buy batteries every other day.
It was. And like, what's funny is there were 2 different models of the SP. Adam, you guys have the first one. I have the second one. I think they were the AGS 100 and the AGS 101. The 100, which is the one you guys have, is a front lit screen. And the one that I had, the AGS 101, was a backlit screen. But still, like, all of the Game Boy Advances were awesome. We all loved those things. For you guys, I'm sure they were your Advanced Wars and Pokemon machines.
A couple other games too, but that was the big one.
And I already mentioned my experience with the Game Boy Advance games in the Super Mario Advance series. I have plenty of other games for it, but those are probably the ones I remember the best. I think that the Game Boy Advance signified a big jump in the handheld market because, you know, before that we had either handheld game consoles that, you know, they weren't very powerful. The most powerful one before the Game Boy Advance on the Nintendo side was the Game Boy Color. And it was like a colorful...
Racist.
What can I say, man? It is what it is. The Game Boy Color was like a little less powerful than the NES, but wasn't that vomit green screen that the original Game Boy had. It still wasn't very powerful, but the Game Boy Advance was basically a pocket-sized Super Nintendo, and that was nuts. At least to someone who had never used a Sega Nomad before, which was basically a portable Genesis. I don't know, man. Like, it was just exciting. The games that were on that thing, taking advantage of the new graphics and the new power of the hardware. Gosh, it was a turning point, I think. And it showed in its sales. Like, that thing sold like crazy. It was like 81 or 2 million units. Very popular system. I don't know. I guess I liked it.
Bullshit. I think you hated it.
This is in the era before, you know, well before. This is the era before smartphones were capable of, you know, were a thing.
Yeah, smartphones first came out in 2007. So Yeah, that was definitely a good amount of time before the first smartphone came to the market.
And it took a while after they got here for them to supplant most mobile consoles.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do have another question for you guys. Out of all of the handheld systems that we've owned, even if you're not a Nintendo kid, Nintendo pretty much had a monopoly on the handheld market. Any ideas as to why? I'm genuinely curious. I haven't really thought much about this myself, so we're pretty much all in the same boat here.
The other companies had other
so
hands in different areas, whereas Microsoft was focused on PCs for their OS and stuff, and Sony obviously had their electronics that they were selling, so they probably felt like their small intervention in the gaming industry was more than enough to justify, I don't know, sales and stuff, instead of having to go more of a handheld side, whereas Nintendo really is purely gaming, and they're just like, how can we make more sales with different things? Different idea. How can we make, I don't know, kids buy more of our crap, essentially?
I was going to say kids can't drive, but yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, Nintendo had to think more about, you know, how to reach a wider market.
The implication being that... Sorry.
Go ahead.
The implication being that Nintendo made kid games, and you know their Game Boy and everything was very focused on kids, and you know there's nothing more annoying when you're driving a car than having some little kid like sitting next to you poking you the whole time.
Are we there
Plug
yet?
him into, hand him the Game Boy Advance, kick on the game. He's like this the whole time, and you're like, praise be.
Gosh, I know Nintendo. I was that way on my family road trips. Like, I had a Game Boy with me at all times. But that doesn't really answer the question about, you know, the prominence in, like, the 5th generation of consoles of Nintendo's handhelds, where you had Sega, which was also just a gaming company.
Oh, I forgot about them. That's how prevalent they are. It's just, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. Like, they tried their foray into the console market, or the handheld console market too, but at least I don't remember them being that successful. The Nomad, like I just said, I think it was the more impressive piece of tech. It was, like I said, it was basically a portable Sega Genesis. In fact, it was to the point where you could plop a Sega Genesis cartridge in the Nomad and it would play. But it had like a 2-hour battery life on 6 AA's.
Yeah, it's just inefficient.
Very. And like if
anyone.
And if you want to play it for any reasonable amount of time, you have to be tied to the wall with an AC adapter.
Yeah, which defeats the whole purpose of having a handheld device in the first place.
Mainstreamed.
Maybe if rechargeable batteries were a little bit more mainstreamed at that point, it might have done better. So that way, it's like you play and then you're able to drop it down and not have to get new batteries. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point, considering it's a lost, I don't know, piece of machinery at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For Sega, I don't know what to say about them. That maybe they just weren't doing too hot, and then also Nintendo's just like, hey, we're going to drop this idea, and they're just like, shit, we have to keep up in this competition because we're already struggling, and if we fall farther behind, then we're just dead in the water, you know?
Mm-hmm. Dan, were you trying to say something?
Oh, when you said portable, a portable handheld, but you had to have it plugged in the wall the whole time, I was like, gee, that sounds familiar, Wii U, and that went so well.
The poor Wii U. It had an identity.
Like PU.
It had an identity crisis.
All it was a home console Nintendo DS. Prove me wrong.
The other thing is that, like, the Wii U, wanted you to use that touchscreen thing as your controller, and it is not a comfortable controller.
I mean, I got used to it, but that's probably
Well,
because
you
I'm an
got
ardent
used to
Nintendo
it.
fan.
But like you could get used to a lot of things. Let's put it that way. Like,
Yeah.
holy, like it's so huge and bulky to hold like that. Like I've held Jeff's before, and it weighs so much. Like this weighs as much as like a hardback 600-page book.
It's a hefty piece of machinery.
It's hard to hold those for a long time.
And it's a kid's console.
Like
I
I can kind of deal with it, but I've got enormous hands. And like Jeff has nerves of steel to like death grip that thing for so long. But like some kid, like, oh my gosh, how do they even like hold it for more than 5 minutes without their fingers just snapping off?
Dude, that's why kids are so strong nowadays.
Yeah, that's why they have grip strength.
Now, I do have another question about, a Nintendo console versus a different console, specifically handheld. Again, targeting the prominence of Nintendo's presence in the portable market. What about the 3DS versus the Sony PlayStation Vita? Why did the 3DS do so well, yet the PS Vita flopped?
I think it was just that the market for portable games was just better in Nintendo's field, whereas Sony really didn't have like that portability backlog of games that they could port over to it. So they had more games that were already or were more easily accessible to be ported over to the 3DS, whereas Sony had to make things from scratch to toss on to, well, I guess that's not true because the Vita was able to do a couple ports and everything.
Yeah, didn't it have ports from the PlayStation Portable?
Yes, but I don't think that many.
Okay. A far cry from Nintendo 3DS's backwards compatibility with the entire DS back catalog.
So I think that my brain just exploded.
He shut down.
Yeah. Adam.exe has stopped working. But I think that part of it is similarly to how coming into the earlier generations, like the SNES, like during the NES era, it was so like dominant in that space that like older people, I can say older people, but people that didn't know about gaming consoles called them Nintendos. Mm-hmm. Because they were that, like, that was the thing. And I think the same thing, like, people would call a portable game console a Game Boy. Like, because that was what Nintendo called. They were out there first. They were the most popular. Like, I think part of this, Nintendo had such a huge piece of the market share. And they're like, look at the new fancy one. You can plug your old cartridges right into it and keep playing your old games and everything. It was very easy for them to hold on to that,
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then essentially what happened is after that, mobile gaming and phones, everything started just sort of like blotted out the sun in that market before the competition could roll along too far.
Yeah, the last great selling, well, not great selling, but the best selling portable console from Nintendo, actually the second best selling system ever, was the DS, and that came out right before smartphones became, the portable gaming machines.
Mm-hmm. And there was, of course, a transfer era as smartphones were developed and became such a ubiquitous thing.
Sure, but even the 3DS did quite well. 79 million units is nothing to scoff at, and that was
they didn't do like they still, like I said, they were still holding on to a good chunk of market share there for their
portability gameplay.
Mm-hmm. And it's only recently that started to fade, but then they have the Switch anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like it has all become one.
I would also say that like the Vita just lost support from Sony.
Oh, yeah.
That piece of hardware is so good. and it is so upsetting at how much they just let it die out.
Yeah,
it had so much potential.
Honestly,
it was playing literally PS. It was playing like PS2, PS3 games on it, which is most impressive.
I mean, like not native PS2 and PS3 games. They were obviously demastered per our previous conversation. But yes,
but
it was
still
still
the
impressive.
fact that I was able to run those games on it.
It had its own Uncharted game. Gravity Rush was an interesting title on that thing. Persona 4 Golden, still critically acclaimed reason to have a PS Vita. Like, it had some good stuff going for it. It's a shame that it died. You know?
See,
I don't know. I think it just dropped support from Sony because Sony was more focused on its home consoles and figured that the next
when did the Vita come out?
Same time frame as the 3DS, around 2010 or 11.
Yeah, so I'm guessing what happened is Sony didn't like have Nintendo's stake in the game, as it were, when it came to the mobile market, and they saw the writing on the wall with the smartphones and such. And I'm assuming what happened is they basically decided to cut their losses. I don't know if that was the right call or not, though. I guess
I wish they didn't. Like, I would have bought a PS Vita.
I think in the long term for Sony, it probably was the right call, because like I don't think they could, like, they might have been able to, with like a hard push, make that generation, like make the Vita a thing. But I don't think there would have been much longevity in it. That probably, like, they made like if they'd made a successor console, I don't know if it'd been able to do anything. Like, I don't know. It's just I don't know, like I said, this smartphones have become so dominant in that, and to the point where like there are games that you used to be able to play. There are games that like are under support still, I think that's the way to say it, for PC that have mobile, that you can play on mobile now. Like, there are games that are dual PC and mobile, that's one thing, but like literally like, yeah, that's the one that jumped to mind, but actually in this case I'm referring to Civ 6, I think is the current one. There is a mobile version. Yeah, Civ 6 is a PC game. It's currently under support. They're still releasing like expansions to it, and most of them are free, but they're still releasing content for it. Like, it's still definitely being supported by its developers, and it's a mobile game. Now you have to have a pretty chunky, like, you have to have one of the newest, well, not this generation of phones that is coming out now, but like you have to have like a pretty modern, top of the line smartphone to play it, but you can. Like, if you do have that, you can play essentially the whole game on your phone, and it's still under support on PC. Like, that smartphones have gotten that close. Mm-hmm. Now you can't run it with all the tricks and things going, and it can get a little bit, from, I read a review on it at one point, but so I haven't played it myself on the phone, for obvious reasons, but, like, if it gets very late game on like a huge map, it can get pretty, heat your phone right up, let's put it like that, to try and
drop
do
it like it's hot, 'cause it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it can really stress test it. Like, it's probably, unless you have like the most like top of the line brand new next gen phone, it's probably really pushing it, but like, come on here, like, that's how close we're coming to parity here. And like, there's literally an outrageous number of games that are popular and like that are on Steam that work perfectly well on the Switch or on a powerful phone.
Yeah,
like
Ori and the Will of the Wisps comes immediately to mind. That game was a graphical powerhouse on Steam and Xbox Series X, and it plays perfectly well on Switch. That's amazing to me.
Well, and then think of all the like retro games and stuff that are very popular right now,
and
like
indie games having a lower demand.
2D games, all these things that aren't like super processor or graphically intense, phones could handle them if there was an easy way to, get them on there. And their OSs were compatible, but their operating systems were, playing nice with each other. But the point I'm trying to say is that I don't know how long. I don't know why Sony made the decision to cut support, but given where we are now, I think it was probably the right one in terms of making money.
All right, Dan, what were you going to say?
Yeah, go Daniel.
On the topic of phones, on my best of game list a couple of streams ago, I think one of our first streams, when we talked about what are your favorite
podcasts?
Games? Right, podcasts. One of the games I said that I truly love is, hilariously, The Room, which is an app game. It was designed completely for phones and touchscreens. It handles beautifully. It was a great game, and the whole story of it, is a story for another time, another place. If people want to know, put it down in the comments if you want to know the story of why I love The Room. But The Room is a mobile game. It was successful. They produced The Room 1, 2, 3, Lost Memories, so 4 games, and then they came out with a VR title, and this is all an indie development team, which truly is amazing that the game produced such a quality that it was able to run for so long on a mobile device. And there are actually quite a few mobile titles that have just done wonderfully. However, would I have said that is, all things mobile are great because they're easy to access and can be adapted well? No. I can think of, just off the top of my head, just going to the App Store, trying to look up anything popular, just like, Fortnite, and just finding so many rip-offs and so many just quick, it's an easy, accessible marketplace to so many people. Someone's got to buy our $2 janky, farming simulator Fortnite crossover. I bet it exists. I don't even have to look. So, yeah, that's my tie-in. I will now go back into hiding.
All right,
Good, stay there.
In our outline here, I wanted to ask our dedicated handheld consoles a thing of the past, but instead of asking it in that sort of frame of mind, do we anticipate dedicated handheld consoles going away, or do we foresee them having kind of a new life in a different sort of form? Like the Switch kind of indicates to me that we might be heading down a path of hybrid systems. Do we see that kind of being the future of a handheld consoles? That's kind of a weird question, but
no.
What are we? What the future of handheld consoles?
Yeah, so
I missed the first part of the question.
All right, let me rephrase this. So
I blanked out. I was like, what?
Up till this point, Nintendo has consistently released dedicated handheld consoles. This generation, they have merged their handheld with their home consoles, and it's been a roaring success. There's definitely a market for it. Given that, and the fact that phones are so dominant in the industry now, do we see a history? Do we see a future for handheld consoles, or are they just going to be a thing of the past now?
I think there will always be a market for accessibility.
And in this case, are you referring to portability?
Portability, being able to tap our forehead and access a Steam library from our nano chips.
I hate that idea.
There'll always be a market for just being able to reach over and be like, I'm going to play a game. I'm just gonna go play a game for a little bit and just cool off.
In
There
one
will
way, very
always be a
cool.
market
In one
for
way,
that.
very terrifying.
Right. Jeff's over there. Jeff, weren't you the one that said that SAO had to? So if people don't know, Sword Art Online, Jeff will only play VR if it is able to link into his brainstem and he's able to experience it entirely. But he hates the idea of a tiny nanochip inside his head that gives him an interface.
Yeah, kind of. Like, what I said at that point was that the only time I'd be interested in virtual reality is if it were to the level of Sword Art Online. And it's not.
Right.
And it probably never will be. But
Yeah, don't say that.
okay, I rescind my previous statement.
How about won't be in your lifetime?
Hopefully.
There. Hopefully it happens. Jeff is like 80 years old. Send me into the Matrix, guys. I'm gonna go and ride Yoshi. This feels so real.
And so right.
The true Yoshi fanatic.
How did we get here?
I don't know. But
Oh my gosh.
all right, so something I want to pass to you guys. I don't see dedicated handhelds being a thing anymore. But the hybrid nature of the Switch is very fascinating to me. And I wonder if that, not this generation obviously with the PS5 and Xbox Series X, but maybe in the future, could hybrid systems become ubiquitous? Here's my vision for a hybrid system. My smartphone right here, I could, use it as a smartphone during the day, plunk it into a dock, use it as my work computer at night, or a work computer at work. Like, I just have a dock that I plunk my phone into. It's my computer, it's my phone, and if I wanted to hook it up to the TV, put it in a dock kind of like a Switch, it's my game console too.
Well, at that point, it would be... I mean, I suppose that's a theoretical possibility. The other direction of that is you just, somewhere in your house or whatever, you have a brick of computing power, and then you're just essentially remote accessing it on everything.
Two definitely different visions, but two that are equally exciting. What do you think, Dan and Hen?
Essentially, that being, then you have the processing power there, then you just have to essentially have a remote access point and a screen. But the idea that, yes, it's all going to become one system, I think is very appealing.
I think so. That's an exciting future for me. Especially as someone who's not I'm a Nintendo
giant monopoly.
I'm a Nintendo guy. I'm not a power user, right? I know that I know that some people really like their high spec PCs and everything, but I'm not one of those guys. I'm fine with 1080p 30 frames per second, 60 FPS if I can get it. Honestly, that idea of just using a smartphone for all of my computing and gaming needs, that's appealing to me. And I hope that that's kind of a future that we start steering towards. That's kind of my idea of what the handheld market is kind of transitioning into. Or could someday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's kind of a stretch, asking what's the future of a handheld console, and that's kind of my answer, but...
Right. Because eventually, in the far enough future, the term handheld, I think, will only apply to beverages and tools.
I'm pretty sure that...
There will become an advancement, will be hands-free console. I think if the technology allows it. Where essentially it'll be we're just going to map your hand movements. I mean, they've already designed keyboards that you just display it on a surface and then you just type away.
Man, that can't be comfortable.
They actually have this is actually quite old school, but they have a set of gloves that you wear and you can type with.
Yep,
Now
I've heard
it's
about that.
not
I love
like
the power
you're-
glove. It's so bad.
it's not like
no.
you're like, now understand when I say type, I don't mean that you're like air typing like a moron in front of you. Actually, there's a series of contact switches down the fingers, and so by bending fingers in different ways, you get different letters.
Yeah.
By touching different switches. So like it doesn't look like typing. Your hands are basically closed and you're like, you're basically, your hands are closed and you're just moving, you're touching your fingers to different spots on your palm, different contact switches. And so the pattern is very different than typing, but like they did develop them and you can like, they're not something you buy commercially, but someone like made them to prove that you could, and then like developed how you type, and like you had like, I think it was, how did that work? And then you had like the control and shift were like controlled by your, like closing your, like pressing the knuckle of your thumb was like control, and then the whole thumb was shift or something. And then you just press different combinations of fingers to get all your different letters, and you could type, and it was linked, and you could basically have your hands at your side and be standing there and typing away. And you could barely even see that someone was doing it. Like it just looked like they were like wriggling their hands a little bit, like trying to keep warm or something. And they were actually typing.
Random thought. I wonder if that has a QWERTY layout or if it has something different.
No, it's not at all QWERTY. There's no keyboard at all. It's like it like
He's
I forget
saying
exactly how it was, but like
Q,
because the pinky could only press one thing, like half the like
worth a shot.
One hand had like, I forget, how was it? Like I forget how there, essentially you had six, like, essentially you had like, I believe it was, 6 buttons on one hand and then 6 on the other for your main fingers. And then you would have, and then like by holding your pinky, it would switch those 6 to a different 6. And so like you actually only had like 2 different buttons for each finger, and then you had the pinky which would switch it, and then your thumbs were a couple of like, so like it was nothing remotely like a keyboard layout at all.
Thinking
like
of it that way, I'm like, I probably would suck at that because I suck at sign language. So
like like yeah, I know that was my thought too. But like so like position 1 with it would be like A. It'd be like your. It would be like your, say you clench you touch your index finger to the top of your first knuckle.
We
that
went
would be A. Then you'd close that pinky and that would become like Z or something. It would become like a different letter depending on whether you're, so like, it was extremely complicated. Like I was like, holy shit, how did someone ever learn this? But like, it was possible to do with just a few buttons on the hands, but like this is way off topic. It was just it was a cool proof of concept. I think they maybe like some spy agency hat like maybe was interested or something. I don't know, but like stealth type. But like I have like it didn't seem particularly practical, but it was possible. I think was
Making
more
pasta.
the point.
Swish. There we go.
how's your pasta, Dan?
Pasta robot doing good. Beep. Beep. So Adam basically helped support my point hilariously in the fact that saying handheld console is essentially going to turn to high portability console, which is what I think will happen. Because our interfaces over time will advance to the point of faster interfaces is not our fingers, but either our minds, movements, and things along that route.
Basically, what I think will happen is there won't be a dedicated game console anymore. Just like you no longer have a dedicated phone. It's your phone, your calendar, your, this,
Alarm
that,
clock,
it's,
YouTube,
alarm. Yeah,
viewer.
like it's taking over a whole bunch of things in your life that you care. Like you don't carry a watch, you have your phone. Like little bits of accoutrement that you'd be carrying around have all just been folded into like a singular device.
You mean our phone?
Essentially, your gaming will all be folded onto some, will fold into the same device eventually, and they won't be making, dedicated game consoles at all. You'll have like one computer that does everything. Either it's a single computer and you essentially just plug it into whatever display you need, like Jeff was saying, or you have some big ass computer somewhere and you just remotely connect it to it at all. Like it'll essentially end up being one unified system that you just, connect to, that you just, use for everything.
Yeah. What do you think, hon?
Yeah.
The gloves
on
freaked
that
you out,
note,
didn't
folks.
they? The gloves messed you up, didn't they?
I don't know. Future of handheld gaming. To me, my mind thinks that Nintendo's going to keep going with the way that they're going, which is like the hybrid kind of console handheld portability. Sony's going to focus on just console, and then Microsoft might stay in the console gaming industry, or they might just stick with PC, with them slowly transitioning with their games being PC accessible nowadays.
I was going to say,
or they might double dip.
I think Microsoft is going to go down the VR route because I think that's. Microsoft, PlayStation.
I think they're going. I think that Microsoft's going down the streaming route. They don't even care that you don't buy an Xbox anymore. Like, you can get Game Pass on your PC as long as you're in that ecosystem. That's all they care.
Exactly. So, if anything, they might double dip as a way of being able to make the consoles for purchases and stuff, but they might lean more into PC orientation because I don't know. I think the market's just more viable there.
For sure. Well, I guess to summarize all of our thoughts on the future of handheld gaming, dedicated handheld gaming consoles kind of not even the thing now. They're being replaced with what is the flexible gaming experience. Play how you want, right? That's kind of why the Switch is so successful right now. Play how you want. Want to play on the TV? Go ahead. Want to play on the bus? For sure, it works. But dedicated handheld gaming is less and less of a thing now, and we don't really see it making a big comeback rather than just evolving, basically. I think that's kind of what we all envision. You're not going to see another Game Boy. You're going to see something different, something new, something that still provides flexibility but doesn't limit you to just being on one device anymore. Or one screen, I should say. I don't know, is that a pretty good summation?
No, it's terrible, but we'll take it.
Damn it, Jeff.
I don't know. Any more thoughts on the handheld side of things, guys?
Yeah, it's a dead thing. Except Switch.
I don't think it's dead. I think it's just sort of
dead and gone. Let it die, Adam. Let it die.
I think we should say is they don't design systems as much as they finance the mobile market these days.
That's what I was gonna say. I was just saying, like, a dedicated portable gaming system is, essentially disappeared. Or is rapidly disappearing, but the idea of mobile games, there you go, or portable games is not gone. It's simply moving into, moving on to other things.
Yeah, pretty much what I said.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that sums it up. Yeah, let's go. Let's get out of here before we say the same thing another 5 or 6 times.
All right, sounds good.
Repeat. We really got to hit it home.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Well, guys, I think that pretty much wraps up our conversation for tonight. Good discussion topics. I enjoyed them, and I hope you guys enjoyed them. So, thank you guys for joining me for this episode. Daniel, you have you streamed a couple times. Where did you do that? And where do you continue to?
Me do at Dance Warrior 777. Me play a lot different games. Me try to figure out what to play this time. But yes.
Twitch.tv/DanceWarrior777. What kind of games do you stream over there?
I stream lots of games, interesting concepts, very, very odd concepts. And we'll take recommendations also if people have a game that they really want me to see that I am interested in. No, we will not play what was it called? There was a horror game. Someone wanted me to keep playing it. I'm like, guys, I've gotten like all the achievements for this game, and all we're doing is just upping the difficulty.
I was going to make the recommendation of Blue Fire, but that's only because I'm interested in that game.
Blue Fire. Hey, if you can send that to me, I will give it a shot.
It's on Steam, my dude. $18 right now. Just came out Wednesday, the 4th.
What's it about? Well, what's it about, actually, real quick?
You know Hollow Knight?
Yeah.
It's basically
guys,
3D
we can
Hollow
do this
Knight.
after the podcast is done.
Okay. No. I'm intrigued. Anyway.
Well, anyway, Dance Warrior 777 over on Twitch, guys. Go check him out. And I also want to remind you guys again that we have the video form of the podcast on YouTube at Volatile Upgrade, and we have the audio-only version for your listening experience on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and a couple other sites under the Gaming Corner Podcast. And once again, if you have any questions for us that you'd like to that you'd like us to answer in the next podcast, feel free to leave a comment either in the YouTube video or in our Discord server. The link for that is in the description below, guys. Adam, Henry, do you have anywhere you'd like to send the fans?
To hell.
Oh, why?
I think we're good.
But it's warm, Jeff. I'm looking out for them. I swear.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining me for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And we'll catch you next time here on the Gaming Corner Podcast.
Bye-bye.
Love yous. Bye.
Keep on dancing, everybody.